boys and girls, it's Mrs. Kehrer here and with my dogs. This is Gus, Roxy, and I have Hank. Come here. They're probably going to pop in and out during the video. They like whenever I hang out with them. Alright, so I have a story for you today. It's called Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Right, Santa was looking over his list of naughty and nice children. Most of them have been very good all year, but there were still a few kids that Santa was a little worried about, especially Sam and Mike. Santa asked his helper, Timothy the elf, how Sam and Mike were doing. Well, said Timothy, they tried to be good, but they seemed to have a hard time sometimes. There were only 4 days until my big trip, said Santa Claus. Keep an eye on them. Sam and Mike were running into the kitchen. It's 4 more days until Christmas, said Mike. No, said Sam, it's only 3. It's 4, shouted Mike. No, 3, cried Sam. Boys, said their mother, must you argue over everything? This time you're both right. There are 4 days left until Christmas, if you count today as one of them. If you don't count today, then there are only 3. So they're arguing and they were both already right. Sam and Mike went to the living room where their older sister Katie was playing. I still say there are 4 days left until Christmas, said Mike. Right, Katie? You two boys are always arguing, replied Katie. Don't you know what happens to children who argue all the time? Santa knows all about how you two act. He knows whether you boys have been good or bad. So you'd better watch out, you two. Gee, said Mike, we should try to be careful. Okay, no more arguments. Let's go sledding. Do you like to go sled riding with your friends? Sam and Mike walked down the street and passed Mr. Paulson's yard. Mike wanted to sneak in and sled on the big hill there. Mr. Paulson said he doesn't want anyone to sled in his front yard, replied Sam. But maybe just this one time wouldn't hurt. But Mr. Paulson came out and saw them in his yard. What did I tell you boys about sledding here? He shouted from his door. Meanwhile, Santa Claus was talking to Timothy. What's the latest news on Sam and Mike? He asked. Timothy shook his head and told Santa about how Sam and Mike's argument and about the sledding in Mr. Paulson's yard. Those boys do have a very hard time being good, said Santa. What do they want for Christmas? 2 elves held up the toy train and the skates that the boys wanted. I sure hope I'll be able to deliver these toys to those boys, said Santa. At just about this time, Sam and Mike were on their way to the park. There, they found some boys who were playing in the snow. They had chosen teams to see who could build the best snow fort. Mike and Sam decided to join in. Just then, Sam saw little Joey sitting by a tree, away from the older boys. Joey looked like he had been crying. Oh, I can't forget my cat. There's Benji. Coming to see what his mom's doing. Joey was sad because the older boys wouldn't let him help with their forts. They said he was too small. Hey, Joey, said Sam. Mike and I need someone just your size to reach the tough spots. The 3 of them set to work, with Mike and Sam lifting Joey up to pile the snow on top. Their fort stood taller than the others. Soon, the other teams were asking Joey to help them reach the high spots too. Joey was as happy as he could be. A few days later, Santa Claus was getting ready for his trip. Timothy, he called, what about Sam and Mike? I'm ready to pack their presents. Great news, Santa, said Timothy. He told Santa Claus about how Sam and Mike asked Joey to play with them. I knew they were good children, Santa said. Sam and Mike did the most important thing. They were kind to someone, and that's what really counts. Boys. Shh. As Santa started his long trip, Sam and Mike were getting ready for bed. They had hung up their stockings by the chimney. They set out cookies and milk in case Santa wanted a snack. After the boys were all tucked into bed, Mike was thinking about starting a big pillow fight. Just then, Mike said, someone knows whether I am being naughty or nice. And he also knows whether you're sleeping or awake, said Sam. So let's try to go to sleep now. Late that night, as Santa put the boys' presents under the tree, he said quietly, "Well done, Mike and Sam. You were good for goodness sakes." That's the end. Remember, always be nice. Bye.